Good morning, everyone. And hey, welcome to Spotlight on Australia. Let me just, how many Australians are in the audience at the moment? Put your hands up. Yay, fantastic. Welcome, everybody, and I hope the jet lag's not too bad. This morning, I'd like to introduce you to Gregor Jordan and a project called SmashCut that we co-produced with Gregor. And but really, rather than sort of delve too much into the project itself, what we want to do is talk a bit more about the broader trends of filmmaking, of the impact of digital on filmmaking, and really how, both within the Australian scene and also in a sort of global sense, sort of what the various trends are. So, firstly, welcome, Gregor.
Thank you.
Welcome to the sort of TV side of Cannes rather than the film side of Cannes, which is always exciting.
It's a bit different.
It's a different vibe, but hey, you know. So look, SmashCut's a purely digital project. What makes digital media interesting to a filmmaker?
Well, I guess filmmaking is changing a lot at the moment. Like the changes have gone ahead in the last 2 years, in particular in independent films, are massive, and a lot of the old institutions are closing down. Like Miramax, for instance, is gone now, and New Line's completely changed, and a lot of the film, distribution companies that I was involved in when I first got involved in filmmaking have now completely gone. And digital seems to be the next thing, although people in the film industry are trying to work out how. And there's a big desire, but no one really seems to know exactly how it's going to happen at the moment. And particularly the technology is now so advanced in terms of like everyday people can get their hands on really great technology that enables them to embrace the digital domain. But in terms of a model for how to exactly put dramatic content on the internet, a lot of people are trying, but there's no clear way yet. And I guess that was it was that question that sort of made me come up with the idea for SmashCut.
And the project was originally very movie-focused, right?
Yeah.
And yet it's launched with the dailies from a music concert, from the Powderfinger farewell tour in Australia. How did that relationship with Powderfinger come about?
Well, Powderfinger, are, for those of you who don't know, are a huge band in Australia. They're a rock band, and whilst they're not that well known outside of Australia, in Australia they pack stadiums and are very well known and very influential. And I've had a long relationship with the band going back to my first film, which I made in 1998, and I've always stayed in touch with them and had a good relationship with them. SmashCut, my website, was originally conceived with the idea of using dramatic content, and in fact, I got the idea when I was working with a friend, making sort of like a very, very low-budget webisode, and we're talking about, how do you put this webisode onto the internet, and have it actually make money? Because, webisodes were appearing here and there, and people were putting dramatic content, just loading it up there for free and whatnot. But, how to actually put something onto the internet and put it up in a meaningful way was an interesting conundrum. So I suddenly came up with the idea of, why not put the raw footage up there, just the actual dailies, like post the raw dailies up on the internet and allow people to create their own edits. And I guess that was sort of the initial inspiration for the site. The Powderfinger thing came much later, and in fact the site's metamorphosized a lot in that period. But the original idea was to how to put dramatic content on the internet, and the answer was to just put the raw dailies up there and then to allow users to use current technology such as iMovie or even Final Cut or whatever they want, whatever editing programs they wanted to use, to do their own edits and then to post those edits back onto the site and then allow people to just come along and watch all these different cuts.
Well, let's have a look at it. maybe you want to talk us through, we've got a sort of DVD run-through of the sort of user experience on the site.
Yeah.
Sort of
Well, hang on. I just want to talk about our meeting, because that's relevant in that, I had this idea. I took it to Screen Australia, who are the government funding body in Australia that fund films. But they have a program there run by a guy called Mike Cowap, which is called the Innovation Program, whereby they actively encourage cross-media. In other words, they were very encouraging of the concept of the film industry and the digital world coming together. And so they funded us, and also he put me in touch with Guy, and Guy's company is the Project Factory, and it was a nice little piece of serendipity, because when I met Guy, he was actually developing an online editing tool which was capable of cutting streaming video. So my idea, and I guess my contacts to gain content came together with his, knowledge of the digital world and this tool that he'd already been developing, and he and I created a partnership and created this company together. And we've been developing it now for a year, and we're sort of where we are now thanks to Screen Australia really providing us with that seed money. And then, the Powderfinger thing, involved a long deal-making process with Universal, because they're very precious about their content and about the licensing their material, and getting them to let you use it was very challenging, but finally they said yes, and we were able to sign a deal just last week whereby we're allowed to put the Powderfinger footage on our site and thereby launch it. And so now we're sort of up and running and this is the site.
Cool.
This is it. So this is basically how the tool works. It's pretty simple, actually. You just take all the content, all the content you can scroll through. You just drag it down into the timeline. You can add music, you can add effects. You can actually upload your own shots to it. And then by just dragging the little cursor back and forth, you can shorten or lengthen the clips, and you can start cutting. It's actually a lot of fun, and it really works very well. And and it works in real time as well. It sort of renders more or less, as you're using it. And then the idea is, once you finish, you then save your cut to the site. So the site, has this obvious interactive element to it, but then it acts also exactly like a viewer, just like, say, something like YouTube, in that, if you don't want to go and actually cut, you can just go and watch all the different, edits of, that people are using. And at the moment, we've just got the Powderfinger footage on there, but the idea is, we're talking to Sony Music at the moment about doing, and they're going to be giving us music videos to load on. But also dramatic content like short films. we can imagine, say, like a serialized version of a feature film or even, a television show. Movie trailers, for instance, could be, ideally suited to this kind of format. And, of course, television commercials as well. You can imagine, for instance, that someone goes out and shoots a new Coca-Cola commercial and loads all the dailies onto the site, and then people come along and do all the different cuts, do a cut of the new Coke commercial, and then, suddenly there's thousands of different versions of this, able to be seen on the site.
So, what's interesting to me about this also is that part of it's about production, right? So part of it is a browser-based sort of editing tool, but there's a distribution element into it as well for filmmakers, right. For content sort of owners and movie makers and sort of even television commercial directors. How does that play out?
Well, look, I think YouTube is obviously fantastic in that it's opened up this whole new world of content to people from all over the world, and it's just fascinating. But the thing that YouTube lacks is access to really high quality raw footage, and it also obviously lacks an editing tool. So I guess the potential for this site is that it takes that YouTube element of being able to watch things from here, there, and everywhere, but gives it this completely interactive element so that you can actually go in and change all the clips and, be creative with it and do your own version. So, the only thing I guess that we're lacking at the moment is content, and, and sort of that's why we're here, is to, hopefully get our hands or, get some interest with people, it'll hopefully spark their imaginations to, see our site as a new way of distributing their content. I guess it's sort of a brave thing in a way because it's new and it hasn't been done, and I guess I sort of thought the obvious place to start would be with music, concert footage and music videos because it lends itself to that kind of media. But, who's to say, for instance, you couldn't, say, have people out there cut the trailer to American Idol, or, you couldn't have people edit, the pilot episode, the new series of, a TV show like Mad Men, for instance, like post the dailies up there and let people create their own versions. Because, if you look at YouTube, it's kind of happening anyway. There is a great desire out there for people to actually be able to get their hands on the material and change it and customize it and personalize it. I guess this takes it one step further.
It's also legit, right? This is sort of, this is a legitimate site. There are business models around it. And yet when you look at, your latest movie, Unthinkable, was heavily torrented way before it came out.
Yeah, well, that's right.
And so, talk to us a bit about that. What was your experience as a film director? That was a new Samuel L. Jackson movie, came out.
Well, the last film I made was a thriller called Unthinkable, starring Samuel L. Jackson, Carrie-Anne Moss and Michael Sheen, and it was, it was released in the US and had something like 6,500 votes on IMDb 3 weeks before it was released, because it was pirated to the internet and it was shown all around the world. And this is a problem that's not going to go away. In fact, it's just going to get worse and worse. Everyday people now have the access to be able to, download pirated video. It used to be a little bit mysterious to be able to get onto those BitTorrent sites. The mystery's now gone. And just everyday people are downloading movies from here, there, and everywhere. And, and I guess that was another reason why I thought we need to try and work out a way to, embrace this as an idea rather than sitting there and saying, hey, this is really terrible. And rather than saying to people, hey, you downloaded this illegally, you're a thief and everything, to sort of try and, I guess, be part of the solution, rather than part of the problem. And I'm not saying that this site is it, but, it might be it.
As you said, the content we've got on the site at the moment is from Powderfinger.
Right.
You know the band, you know the manager, and yet the deal that we had to strike with Universal was really bespoke. and and has had to be written, sort of tailored for this specific project. Do you think there's a bit of a missed opportunity here at the moment with content owners that really to make the sort of deal with sites that have communities, that have revenue models associated with them, should be easier than it currently is?
Well, it should be, but it's not, and and I guess that's just the way it is, and I think it will evolve, but for someone like Universal, they have their, they're a massive corporation and they have their business model and, they have their way of doing things. And so if you want to do business with them, you have to do it their way. And I guess companies like Universal have been criticised, for being slow on the uptake in terms of embracing these new media and, being a little bit behind the times. But their problem is they get bombarded with ideas 24/7 and, they sit there and go, how do we know which is the good one and which is, because for every 100 ideas they get bombarded with, maybe only one or not even one is going to actually work. So, they then have to dedicate time and resources, especially legals, to be able to make deals with people like us. So, we were fortunate to have Powderfinger and their management on our side and basically, put a gun to their head and say, make this deal or else we're going to get upset with you. So, I was lucky, because I knew people and I was able to get it through. But I'm sure if I had have just come and knocked on their door and said, hey, what about this? They would have just said, go away, just on principle.
And on that, I mean, this is a pure play digital project. It's a pretty big radical departure career-wise for a filmmaker. What do your mates in movie land think about what you're doing at the moment when you show it to them?
Well, it is and it isn't. I mean, I guess the inspiration behind the site was, when I was starting out as a filmmaker, I used to hang out at this cafe in Sydney called the Tropicana Cafe, which was full of all these young aspiring filmmakers who all had dreams about, making movies, and were all talking about their scripts and their ideas and everything. And I guess that sort of spirit is what this site is potentially. What I want to try and capture with this site is that spirit just on a sort of a worldwide level, so we've got discussion rooms and everything, but the idea being that some kid in Norway sitting in his bedroom will create some amazing cut of Beyonce's new music video, and then we'll be able to talk about it through the chat rooms on the site and with people all over the world, and then maybe Beyonce herself will see his cut and get him to do her next music video for her or something like that. The idea is that it's about that creative talent and and that desire to create and and make films. I guess that it's that spirit that was very exciting for me when I was starting out as a filmmaker that I've tried to sort of capture in this website.
And SmashCut relies pretty heavily on the dailies.
Right.
It feels like if there's an increased emphasis on those dailies, the director at some point, fingers crossed that this takes off and is has an enormous take up by the movie and filmmaking communities and industries. Do you think there's a way in which directors could look at this and then slightly change the way that they do a shoot when they realise that actually the value of those dailies is now something that the dailies will appear above the parapet, if you like, and will be part of the final product rather than just something that then goes into the edit?
Well, look, I mean, as a director, you're always directing for different media. I mean, if you're directing a television commercial, you change the way you shoot as if you're directing a feature film, or if you're directing a music video, or if you're directing an episode of television. Knowing the media that your shots are going to be seen through does affect the way you shoot something, and I think very much so in this. If directors know that they're going to be shooting things for SmashCut, then yes, it will alter the way they shoot it. They'll shoot it, knowing that it needs to be able to be cut together by some 16-year-old Norwegian kid.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Do you? And I mean, the revenue models that are in SmashCut for content providers, obviously, everyone's going to be looking at and thinking about how do I make a buck out of this? This is great. All the content comes onto the site, but how do they make the money? And those revenue models are pretty different to a regular movie. I mean, we're in the world of banner ads, we're transactional content, affiliate deals, and all sorts of stuff. Is this a world that a filmmaker now needs to be cognizant of needs to understand like far more into the business element than perhaps previously?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, look, I think, the corporate side of filmmaking has been, becoming more and more prevalent, over the last 20 years, just anyway. But over the last couple of years, the corporatization of filmmaking is really everything. And I think filmmakers, embrace that or perish, really.
Yeah.
It is a sad fact. Well, sad or whatever, but there is actually always some sort of like sponsorship element involved with filmmaking, and your films, I mean, if you're trying to make a Hollywood movie nowadays, really, the very first question you get asked is, how can I market this? They design the marketing campaign and then, and then greenlight the film afterwards. So, I don't think that's really, too hard to wrap your head around.
There was a fascinating panel I saw here this time last year, I think, with Jimmy Mulville from Hat-Trick Productions, and he was asked by a member of the audience, who stood up at the end of the panel session, and said, "This digital problem, I don't know what my business model is anymore." And Jimmy gave a really good answer that I was quote back, saying, "Look, we're in a transition phase at the moment from effectively old media, if you like, into a new media." And that necessarily in any transition phase, you get a period of chaos, and we're in that period of chaos at the moment. And he was very much advocating for content producers and broadcasters and distributors that now is the time to experiment, right? That if you don't, then in the transition period from A to B, if you don't experiment and you stick on point A, that by the time everyone's reached point B, you're still at point A. This to me seems like something which is very much in that realm. SmashCut, in the realm of experimenting to get from point A to point B. As you said, it's a new site, it's a new model. There are things that, as we both know, we've had to explain at a pretty fundamental level just about the functionality and how the site works to people like Universal, people like Sony. In the day-to-day, as I said, in the conversations you have with filmmakers and the conversations you have with rights owners, do you think they're starting to see that this experimentation is needed for their own survival?
Well, some are, and some people are, and some people aren't. I mean, there's always sort of people who are diehards and refuse to sort of embrace new technology and embrace new models. But on the flip side, there's others who are fully into it. I talked to some filmmakers about, getting them to let me put their short films on the site, and they sort of look at me a bit blankly. Some of them look at me blankly and go, "Oh, well, no, I'd rather try and, just get it into Sundance." Because for a short filmmaker, you get your film into Sundance, you hopefully get it seen, it hopefully wins an award, and then out of that, hopefully you get offered a feature film. Kind of thing. So that's the tried and tested route for that particular thing. But there's other people who go, "Hell yeah, that sounds really amazing. Let's go for it." So it's a bit of both.
And talking of Sundance, Robert Redford's here, of course. Is he here? No, he is. Let me know.
Should we see if there's any questions?
Yeah. I guess finally, I mean, just to sort of wrap up is. Usually at the end of interviews, we talk about these sorts of things, and people say, what advice would you give to newcomers, into new filmmakers, filmmakers starting out now? Do you reckon if I'd asked that question a year ago and ask it today, do you reckon your answer would be different?
Well, look, I think, the principles of filmmaking always stay the same. Really good ideas are everything, and people who are able to tell a story are gold. But the technology is constantly changing, and embracing the new technology is obviously very important. I think actual film, for instance, celluloid going through a gate is it's literally in its last year or two of existence. The digital cameras that are now available are just incredible. So that in itself is a massive change. Yeah. But to come up with a great story idea and be able to tell it well and tell it in a way that people captures their imagination is totally separate from technology in a way. It's a talent.
Yeah.
So
Great. Let's throw it over to questions. Any questions from the audience? And firstly, Gregor, thank you very much. For being here today. It's good to be part of the thing. Yes, sir.
Hi, thanks. Fantastic presentation. I was going to ask about devices and usage habits. People are iPads, iPhones, smartphones. How that's impinging on your thoughts as a filmmaker of people having these devices and how they may interact with your content, both in terms of SmashCut, but also generally as a filmmaker.
Well, I guess, look, ours is, SmashCut is flash-driven, so I guess it precludes iPads and iPhones at the moment. And I guess just physically we need a certain size screen. I can't imagine trying to, cut together a YouTube music video on an iPhone, although I guess it could be done. But at the moment we're sort of starting out in a certain way, and I guess we'll start to expand into those sorts of technologies sometime in the future.
And I think from my side, we're seeing an enormous rise in operating systems like Google Android and such like, which and new tablets coming out. I mean, things like the Dell Streak, which we love, is a sort of halfway house. And indeed, some of the new mobile phones have got video editing software built in, as you know. So I think it's absolutely part of a roadmap. You've got to look at, you'll be foolish to ignore mobile in any digital project at the moment.
I think we're out of time.
There's one more question there, and then wrap it up.
Hi. I was curious about the responsibility that people take towards what they create on SmashCut, in the sense, like, do they have to give out their name or something like that? Because they are taking quality images, from what I understand, and can create something which looks, professional and like it's important, and not like the low quality that we're used to, which is a bit anonymous and everybody does a bit of everything. But in this case, you can actually do something which could go out there and have an effect. And is there a way for the people who use this system, for them to name themselves?
Well, I think, look, the licensing situation, I guess that's sort of what you're getting at, is a pretty complicated one at the moment. And the deal that we struck with Universal is that no matter what, they own everything all the time. So if anyone comes and creates a cut that is amazing, then Universal will still own it, like we won't own it, for instance. And I guess that's probably the model that we're going to be looking at in the short term, at least, is that the content providers are going to just retain full ownership of everything, and any form that content then takes will still be owned by them. But look, if it becomes controversial, well, yeah, I mean, one of the lawyers at one of the record companies said to me, who's stopping someone, cutting in porn into, someone's music video clip? And I said, well, who's stopping them doing that anyway? You know what I mean? It's like this kind of stuff is going on anyway. Rather than get all upset and all anti it, why not jump on board and be seen to be sort of part of the solution rather than part of the problem? And they all kind of nodded their heads. I mean, look, at the moment, anyone can actually download a music video off YouTube and cut it together with whatever they want anyway. So, this way we're just, I guess, monitoring it a little bit better.
Great. Thank you very much for coming this morning. Gregor, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. Thank you.